Okay, so I have the outside part sanded. I had quite a bit of an overlap on this edge, so I sanded both of those edges all the way down. And I had cut out I set up a template for the wrap that's gonna go on there, and I put the spray mount on there and put that on the gold, and used that to cut that out and then peeled that off. So I have just the one thickness of the gold paper. And I wrapped on one of the surfaces, so it's looking pretty good. I have a little bit of a bow here because of the black when I glued it on there. Sometimes when that wet glue dries on another piece, it kind of warps a little bit, so it kind of warped. But when I put the gold on the other side and let that dry, it sort of straightened itself out, so that was pretty fortunate. So I'm gonna continue gluing this back together, and we're gonna wrap this piece on here. So again, I'm trying to keep the glue to a minimum because it is causing a little bit of warpage. So we'll just finish this up. Again, I want it pretty close to the edge. Complete coverage is good, but it does soak through this gold paper. All right, so let's try that. So again, it's critical to get this right into position. Okay, these folds are helpful just to see where I am. Okay. Make sure that's seating. Okay, looks pretty good. Just press that down, get all the glue to even out. This material is a bit strange. The glue kind of soaks through almost, and you get this little bit of this discoloration, but it all settles in when it finally dries. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, so it's the same. I'm doing this process a little bit different than I did the other one. If you remember correctly, when I did the tray, I took the outside band and made that, and that had all the tabs. Then I fold the tabs around, and then I capped it off with the bottom. Here I'm doing it the other way. I'm making these two outside pieces, the curved pieces, with all the tabs. And then I'm going to put another piece around the outside to finish that off. It's no particular way is better than another. I'm just doing this in this different technique just so we can see how the finishing is different on each one. And just to present the two different techniques. They're both good. Just a judgment call. Sometimes one is better than the other because of what we see. But in this particular one, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm gonna be rolling this edge to the inside. So I need to reduce this material and cut a little 45-degree angle in that corner. So I'm just gonna back this off. And since we have that 1/8 inch in the middle, I'll just bring that back. I'm just sort of estimating how much that'll be. I know it's a little hard to see, but I'll bring it up to the camera. Okay, so I cut that little 45 there and reduced the material. So now when I roll this around the corner, I can bring that to the inside and have a nice little 45 right there. It's still a little hard to see. Just check that, see how that's gonna roll in. And that looks good. Oops, trying to break my tabs. Okay, put a little bit of glue right into that joint and then just spread some out on the tab. Just enough to hold that into the inside. So this rolled tab we will see when the tray is open. So if I can make that pretty even and pretty clean, it'll look intentional. Since the rest of the inside will be black. Okay. So that looks pretty good. nice and clean. Okay, so it's a matter of pulling these tabs down. I'm just putting just a little bit of glue just to hold them down, because they will be completely capped and covered. This can go pretty quick. Just adding a little bit. So I'm just kind of pushing them down. Like so. That little bit of glue is just enough to hold that around the corner. Okay. So I'm seeing a slight bit of that edge that I sanded. It's quite often that has to be absolutely perfect. And since this paper is so thin, it's coming through slightly. Not too bad. Okay. That looks good. That one has glue on it. So keeping all the tabs so they don't overlap and they lay down next to one another helps. Because sometimes when the material is thick, or even a fabric, and these tabs overlap, that thickness can be seen through the material. Okay, so this looks good. Okay. All right. So that's good. So that's completely wrapped on its faces, and these two edges are rolled in. Let's see if that straightens out there. So this final piece, what I did, now I'm going to wrap this as my complete piece to finish this off. So I took a piece of the gold and I rolled the edges over. So now this is a fold and not a cut line. Like on the tray, it had a cut line at the bottom, which you can see. It's a little bit of an edge there, so that's a bit of a compromise on that technique. So for this particular one, I'm going to roll this edge and wrap this around to get that to be completely one color, and that rolled edge will look pretty nice. So let me see how this is fitting. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to align this. So let's put that down. So I know I'm going to put this in this way. I'm going to keep track of my alignment. Make sure this is locked down. And then the glue will go over this entire surface. And then that'll finish off the outer part of the tray. Then the inside of the tray, I'm going to finish lining that with black. And then eventually I'll have an insert. So I kind of dummied up an insert just for position, so we can see how that's going to look. Okay. I get close to that edge, but not all the way. It's always a challenge. So I have a little mark on here where I want to get started. So I'm going to set that up right there. Try to get this as square as possible. And then I'm going to pull that to make sure that stays. Get that started. So that rolled over edge looks pretty good here. Okay. So the finish on this edge, I guess you could consider it to be more important than the finish on the inside edge, because this is the outside of the pack. And this will be seen more readily. Okay. It's that rolled edge. Looks pretty good. again, when this dries, it'll be more even. Okay. So again, this is our final wrap. This is going to come in, but I have to trim that to get that to sit correctly. And I have this edge set up to be trimmed. So let's do a double check here. So when I roll these over, I would like them to line up with that other edge so it looks pretty finished. It's going to be a little challenging. So I have that at, yeah, it's just about 5/8. Let's check this. I want that to be the same, so I'm going to make that at 5/8 right there. And then we'll cut that off. Now these tabs should be, it's a little crooked, I'm going to straighten this out. So those tabs look pretty straight. So now we have to do the same thing. We have to reduce this material on the side here and cut a 45 so I can get that to roll to the inside. I'm going to do that on both ends. I'm cutting a little 45, so that'll meet the other 45, hopefully. Kind of just did those by eye. Okay, so that's not bad. It's coming across and just about lines up on the bottom, so that's pretty good. Okay, so let's cut that on the other side. Subtle little detail, but really helps finish off that corner. See. Okay, I'm going to add a little glue on this material. It might not hold correctly. Okay. And then when I add that to putting it under, we should be in good shape. Okay, so this is the final tab here on this part. Roll that to the inside. So by following up on all these rolled edges, we get a nice finished part. It's really clean. So you can keep rolling the edges and keep rolling the edges, but ultimately there is the last edge. And quite often we'll see those tabs. And what they do in the case-bound box is that rolled edge usually goes to the inside of a box structure, similar to what we're doing here. Okay, so that looks pretty clean. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Okay. Getting a little bit of glue, clean that out. Okay. All right, that rolls nice. So that's the completed outside part. I'm probably going to add some branding on here. I'm going to apply that. I didn't print any branding to put on here, so I'm just going to dummy a label up and do some branding on the outside just to kind of complete the design. Again, this is just for simulating some of these techniques, so I'm not really following any specific brand to do this, but I'll make something else, set something up that'll work. Okay, so that needs to sit and dry, and all those surfaces will settle in. So we have the inside tray that I had completed last time. So I'm going to line the inside of this with black. I'm just using some of this black paper. It's kind of a very, very, very thin board paper. So So I'm just gonna put that inside. Hold that in. I'm just gonna put some glue on this surface. Just to finish off that inside piece. Okay. This is going to take a little bit just to get this in here. Need to make sure I'm in one corner all the way. And then I'm going to push the other corner in. So this I had pre-cut and measured. So I knew this was going to fit nicely. Okay, so that finishes the inside off quite nicely. It's clean. So obviously I have the bottom, but I'm going to make, like I said, an insert that's going to hold product. I mean, it could be completely lined. If it was just completely lined and it was a loose open bin, then I would cut a half moon shape, put that into the bottom just to finish off that so we don't see the chip at the bottom. Okay, let's give that a moment, make sure that settles in. And then on this front surface, I just have a flat piece. And I'll put that in. Just double check that that's fitting. Okay, that looks good. And then that'll finish our parts. And it's a matter of doing our assembly and putting that pin. It's kind of the key to this whole part, was that pivoting pin. Okay. I was putting the corners in first because it might belly a little bit, and then push it into the center. And make sure that that's sitting in place. And that looks good. So it'll be a matter of setting up the pin. Let's see if we can get that to work. Okay, so I took the pin. It's a nail. I cut the head of the nail off, and I cut the point off, and I just filed the very ends just to keep it nice and clean. So it's just a straight pin, and I'm hoping, since I cut it the exact distance that I need here, that it will not protrude out through the other part. So let's see if I can just, I don't want to make the hole on the outside. I'm going to try to make the hole just on the inside, so the pin knows where to go. Let's hope I can get that to set in there. This will be a little bit of a test. So I'm trying not to have the pin protrude through the gold, but it might, because I only have the gold material. I didn't put any reinforcement paper in there, which I probably should have done. So what I might do is I might put my logo plate or my logo branding area on a piece of board and mount that on the outside and use that as a kind of a cap to where the pin's going to go. Sort of faking it a little bit to get that to work. So we'll see how that works. So taking the pin, and I'm going to put it into my drawer. So it's sticking out quite a bit. So it's in there a friction fit. So what we want to do is get this inside of this outside part without protruding to the outside. So it's a little close. Let's see if we can do this. So that's how that's going to work. Let's try. So what I think I'm going to do, I might do it in this half open orientation, like this. I'm going to just stretch the outer box a little bit in both orientations. And trying to get the pin to push into position. Okay, so it broke through the top here. Let's see if I can get that to go down. a little stuck there. Okay, not bad. Yeah, so it is protruding up a little bit. So I might have to take a little bit off of the pin, sticking up just slightly. So I might put like I said, I might put that logo plate right on there to cover that up. That's essentially how that works. So there it is in its closed position. I have a little bit of space around there so it doesn't rub too much. And then the opening orientation brings that all the way around, and it's now open. So by having the pin, I'm having this inside tray is completely engaged. So that's actually pretty strong. It's a lot stronger than I thought it would be. And then this tray can rotate in either direction and work out. So I set up a little dummy insert just for demonstrations. I had these little vials, little tester vials. So I just used a bunch of them just to kind of simulate what this might look like. And I made this little insert. So this is just made out of the black board. I mean, this could be a case bound, it could be a vacuum form, it could be a pulp forming. There's a lot of different ways that this could be made. So I'm just sort of suggesting that might fit in here. And that sits down inside. And then all these little vials fit into these little areas. So I thought that looked kind of interesting. And the way that fans out works really well with the structure. So I thought that was a nice look. And that sits in there like that. So when you roll this in, they all get capped. The tops get covered. So the orientation of the package would be like this. And then I would probably put, like I'm gonna cover that pin head and put the branding here so it might stand like this. And then when your consumer opens it, they roll the tray towards them to the front like this. And then there's access. And then maybe there's a little bit of branding or some graphics on the inside of this kind of fanning shape inside. Okay, so that's the completion of that structure.